Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is wondering if she should marry her partner so he can get a green card. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners or immigration attorneys, just to be absolutely clear about that piece.
Yes, we're literally nothing. We have 2 English degrees. And these are just our opinions. Mm-hmm. So please take our advice as you see fit or don't take it at all. We're only here to offer our humble musings, so hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love and the path to U.S. citizenship. All right. Today's letter comes to us from an American in love whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from the big city. I have a loving, supportive, and growing relationship, something I have been on the search for until last September. That's when I began, for the umpteenth time, the quest to date for the purpose of finding a relationship. I've had 2 significant multi-year relationships in the past and dated aside from that, but found dating after the academic environment more challenging for relationship finding. After many years of disappointing short-term stints, several of which might have been great, several of which might have made for a great JBU episode.
Love that.
I decided to try roster dating. What is roster dating?
I don't. We should have Googled this before we started recording. But
okay, Google it while I keep talking, and then you can interrupt me.
Perfect.
That's how I met, let's call him B, who quickly rose to the top of the roster and became my boyfriend. We've been together for 9 months, and our love is growing every day.
It's where you have casual romances with more than one person at a time.
Oh, cute. I get it. Like a roster.
Absolutely. Makes sense. I'm into it.
We are experts, friends. Okay. After easy, intense mutual attraction and early dates in quick succession, we got to talking about more serious matters. In this process, I learned B is from South America and has lived in the U.S. illegally since he overstayed his tourist visa several years ago. They don't have a checkbox for immigration status on Hinge. Our city is a sanctuary city, and he has a driver's license, but the sanctuary protection seems tenuous, subject to political winds, and does not legally permit him to work. He is on a long list of people waiting to get their day in court, but it could be another 5 to 10 years for B. At this point, my feelings were already growing. I just made sure to protect myself by saying that I wasn't interested in him dating me for citizenship purposes only. This inadvertently happened to my sister with a guy she dated from East Asia, and I saw how much it hurt her to find out his true intentions too late. B said he was dating for romance and regular dating purposes, not papers, and that he could have sorted out the papers by paying for marriage earlier if he wanted that, although it's very expensive. Our relationship has developed in a hot and heavy way, and we're both very in love with each other. The question of B's legal status has come up from time to time, but mostly in an abstract way or when current events bubble up around the topic of immigration, which is essentially a lot. Things got more concrete when we went on our first big trip together. Side note, the trip was great. We were together 10 days and felt closer than ever. We wanted to go on another trip immediately. We had a multi-day conversation about his status, how he feels he's, quote, living in the shadows, and his options, none of which were very quick, affordable, or appealing. I should say that we have loosely talked about wanting to be together for a long time and maybe getting married at some point for love, but we both agree we need more time for that. What we discussed on our trip was not that. We discussed marriage in City Hall for papers. I have been turning this over in my head for several weeks since we first started talking about it. I talked with my therapist and a handful of close people. B has also been very gracious and not pressuring me, but the stakes are high for him, and I can feel that. I feel a responsibility, even a power over this problem that is not my own, but that could affect our relationship. The main effect right now is that he cannot leave the U.S. or introduce me to his family abroad. I could rather easily solve his problem. I'm not ready for marriage yet, but that's by the traditional definition where you announce to your community, have a wedding, etc. My crowd met their sweethearts in business school or college. Part of what I love about B is that he has opened my eyes to experiences unlike my own and vice versa. I'm not familiar with the surprisingly common scenario of marriage for papers. I want to see B in his full form, relieved of this very real daily stress of his legal status, able to properly grow his small business, expand his career without fear, see him in his home country and where he grew up, and meet his family and loved ones. The current political climate and election year is an additional external factor that makes me worry. If Trump wins, I could see him, quote, coming down on the blue states and using people like B as a pawn in some fucked up political chess game. All of the systems, immigration, elections, marriage, are so broken and bogus. Sometimes I feel like helping to make a citizen of my hot, charming, talented, motivated, illegal immigrant boyfriend would be like a vote in the right direction for the country. But other times I get overwhelmed by the gravity of it. We're just boyfriend and girlfriend right now. That would mean lawyers, paperwork, and actions that are a pain in the ass to reverse. We have discussed that if we move forward, he will pay all fees. I would be able to meet with his lawyers to ask questions, and we will keep our books separate because we're not ready to fully combine lives on paper yet. I am also significantly more financially advanced than he is. We would discuss inclement scenarios like divorce, having a prenup, and make agreements in advance. My goal is to keep growing our increasingly beautiful relationship. Whether or not we do the marriage, I worry that something will change our dynamic. I've considered worst case scenarios. If married, then we grow apart and get a divorce. If unmarried, then he gets deported and can't return to the U.S. I'd rather take the divorce. As a friend said, it's kind of hot to refer to your first husband. This letter is like so genuine, and then that last line is like, so whoa. Funny. Okay. I did not see that coming or forgot it was there. So, should I use this strange power I have as an American citizen to give my loving boyfriend the most immense gift I could give? Which way jeopardizes our relationship's future the least?
All right, American in love. Thank you for writing to us and asking this question. I just want to say, first of all, congratulations on finding someone that you are deeply in love with. I think that your relationship sounds really beautiful and supportive. And I'm so glad that you found someone who, as you call it, is hot, charming, talented, and motivated, which are four wonderful qualities for a partner to have. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I really appreciate the way in which you and your partner are being really kind of honest about the reality that you're both sitting in, right? You're not just kind of like sweeping this under the rug or pretending like this dynamic isn't there, but you're actually sort of thinking about it and talking about it in what feels like a really healthy and productive way. So I'm really glad that you and he can trust each other enough to be able to have kind of a crunchy, uncomfortable conversation about what might come next for you. So congratulations on all that. Sierra and I are going to talk a little bit about, you know, the realities of marriage, the realities of immigration, and thinking about how we can look at all of the different meanings of marriage in relationship and how we can kind of embrace or reject some of those things. And also maybe offer some advice. We'll see. We'll see what happens by the end of this episode. But before that, we are going to take a short break.
All right, my darling. Welcome back. And thank you for trusting us with this letter. Truthfully, and this might be like super ignorantly because I don't know you. I don't know your relationship. I don't know your partner. And I am not like effectively versed in any immigration legislation whatsoever. But I love this relationship. I love this for you. You know, staying in the present moment right now. It sounds like you found somebody who you're really interested in and who is really reciprocating that interest in a genuine way. I think that if I'm leading with my sort of like joyful ignorance, truthfully, in my heart of heart, I have no problem with you all making this decision, with mutual consent, awareness, legal support. I have no problem with you getting married right now in this stage of your relationship. If you think about it, what it's hinging on is, at least what I perceive this is hinging on, is this hesitation over the idea of marriage, right? That we have been sold an idea of marriage in our culture and in our country, right? As American citizens, that like you get married as a part of an escalator. And that escalator, if you are two American citizens, looks like X, Y, and Z, right? I think that there are plenty of U.S. born citizens that get married in less time than you're talking about right now.
That's very
you know
true.
what I mean?
Yes. We've gotten letters from those people.
Yeah. I married my wife after living with her for 1 year. We were together for 2. I mean, that's like a very short timeline. And I was self-conscious about it, and I think that, I don't know, I think that's what's tripping you up here, because it sounds like you have your personal morals and politics are in alignment, that like people, particularly like your boyfriend, deserve citizenship, and that there's lots of hurdles between him and that right now, and something that could make his life, you described it perfectly. It's an immense gift. And I don't know, like maybe I'm a huge asshole. I don't need to know in our DMs that I am. But I have no problem with this. Sounds like you should do it.
Yeah.
But I'm also somebody who would be like, oh, do you need a kidney? I have 2. You know what I mean?
You can have one of them, or both if you want. That's
take them both. Yeah. Whatever. I'm fine.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
I've never even seen it. Like, do I actually need it?
Probably not. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Am I an asshole, Sam?
No, I'm with you on this. I think it's important to say that, I just want to make it super clear that like not all people who are undocumented in this country are dating for papers, right? Like that is not the goal. In fact, that might not even be the goal of people who are undocumented in this country, to like have papers, right? To stay in this country, to be part of or to like be a citizen. Like that might not even be the goal of everyone who is here without documentation. And I can also totally recognize the idea that like that is something that needs to be considered as you progress with each other in a relationship. I think I know folks who are in similar situations where one person is a citizen and one person is undocumented, and that's a dynamic that happens in a relationship, right? Like it is playing a role in the same way that when we think about dating across race or dating across socioeconomic status or dating across ability, right? Like these are things that are going to that need to be taken into consideration in terms of how y'all are going to progress forward in your relationship. So I'm really glad that you two are talking about this. And I have a ton of faith that B wants to be in relationship with you, that he's not just doing this because he wants papers, but because he actually really loves and wants to be with you. And I think that that's probably true of a majority of relationships between folks who are documented and who are undocumented and American citizens. And I will also say that the reality of getting married legally in order to support someone staying in this country is more common than we think it is, right? I think that a lot of us, especially like American citizens who may have not experienced this, like look at this process from like a sitcom perspective, right? Where it's like somebody is like trying to trick the immigration office into thinking that they're in a relationship together, and like it's haha funny that they have to like hold hands or whatever. But like the reality is that, these types of situations where somebody is agreeing to get married maybe earlier than they would in before, or get married sort of legally, but maybe not emotionally, is more common than we think. And I think actually a great thing for us to be doing in order to help support folks who are here without papers. And I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this letter is because I think it's important for us to like think about and talk about marriage in all of its different meanings, right? Because we think of it as one thing, which is like, love and like wanting to be with each other, right? But like marriage is also a religious institution. It is a like civic institution. It's an emotional institution, right? And it's got all of these different meanings that are maybe connected, but possibly not. and I think it's important for us to like make sure that we're being clear-headed about some of these things, right? Like, you know, I think about this sometimes when people are like, oh, well, we're not married because like we don't need the state's approval of our relationship, which is like totally fine and justified. And one of the reasons why Peter and I got married was because if he's in the hospital, then I can like come to the hospital with him, right? And we don't have to sign like a power of attorney or like whatever it might be, right? We can just sign this one document and suddenly I'm afforded all of these different legal rights to support Peter in the way that I want to support him. And I just wanted to like unpack and pull apart some of those different things because it helps us make some informed decisions about how we want to move forward, not just in this case, but in like lots of considerations around marriage, which again, I don't think we think about. We're just like, yes, marriage is an institute. Like we're just so excited about it, but it's like, there's lots of different layers to it. And which ones are we agreeing to and which ones are we not? And can we talk about those things? Can we agree to them? Can we move into this with like full consent around what we think these things mean to both of us? Like the dismantling of the relationship escalator and saying like marriage actually means a bunch of different things. So which things are most important to you?
I think that's so beautiful. I was like sitting here thinking about like, I wonder if Willow, my wife, and I would have gotten married if we didn't have children, you know, being a same-sex queer relationship, knowing the medical hurdles that we would have to go through, not really knowing all the extent of them
For sure.
because that was traumatic, but not really knowing, knowing that we wanted the symbolic paperwork of our partnership on paper. I'm not really sure if we would have done it if we didn't want to have, if we didn't, we hyphenated our last names so that when we go pick up our child somewhere, we both have the same last name, I love the idea of thinking about marriage as not just what we see on Pinterest or what we've seen in the movies of like love at first sight, together forever, happily ever after. But instead, like you said, it's an institution. It is so much more than just this romantic idea. And that is okay. That is okay. That is okay. Everybody can have their own definitions of all of these things. And so I'm also like reading between the lines of your letter, and it sounds like you want to do this, what's like bringing it back to my marriage, which is 100% not the same whatsoever. But I just want to affirm the fact that like, even in my marriage where I was like, yes, I want to marry you for reasons outside of citizenship. I want to marry you so that we can be a legal family. I remember feeling self-conscious that we were getting married so soon. And even though I knew that it was real, I knew that our desires were real, I knew that my love was real, I knew that everything that I needed to be true was true, that didn't prevent my insecurities and my fear of judgment and the perception that other people have from leaking in. So that sounds like that's happening, but I'm going to give you another piece of advice. Moving towards the fact that it sounds like you want to do this. It sounds like you're doing your due diligence by talking to your therapist, talking to your friends, doing research, talking to your partner, and writing to strangers from across the country. You're doing the right work, right? To really assess the ins and outs, to feel all of the edges and corners of this, to see like if this is something you want to do. But I'm going to assume that the ultimate answer is going to be yes down the line. You could say a year from now, 6 months from now, I don't know. But something that I do see on the horizon that I want to draw to your attention so that you can bring these conversations to your partner is, listen, the second you start having to deal with this type of shit, like paperwork and lawyers and stuff, your relationship is going to open an entirely new cavern of your partnership, romantic or not, that you haven't accessed, that is fraught with potential conflict.
That's also true.
Because is your partner organized? Is your partner do they have the ability to like keep a calendar of appointments? How do they handle this type of stuff? Like, I had to learn a new level of intimacy with my partner, even with my friends. Oh my God, I'm thinking about like you and Spencer and I starting this business.
Yep.
Like we had to learn a new language when we started this podcast to communicate professionally, to deal with payroll and taxes and labor distribution, you know, like.
For sure.
And that is harder than just being friends. and I'm just saying, like, separate of any moral feelings about marrying this person to give them citizenship, which I have no problem with whatsoever. There's just know that this is a new way of being in partnership together. This is going to be a new part of your relationship. And what are you going to do when it's misaligned or like,
for sure.
I just want you to be ready for that. Does that make sense?
No,
like,
absolutely.
And have you experienced that in your relationship?
Yeah, I think it does, right? Because you're adding a different level of logistics to this relationship, which is not a bad thing.
A different kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it's, and there are different ways that I think this level of complication can play out, right? Like moving in together is another great example of like, oh, this just adds a level of logistics and complication that we need to prepare for and recognize that things might be weird or crunchy, but that doesn't mean that we're doing anything wrong, right? Like there's different ways in which relationships can be challenged by a different set of things that we have to move through. And I think that's totally real and should be taken into account. And also, these types of things happen all the time, right? And people figure out how to move through them, whether that's like a marriage where we are going to the church and having all of our friends there and we're doing this, or a marriage of convenience because one of us needs health insurance and the other person has it, right? Like our relationships are able to withstand them as long as we're able to have these types of conversations and kind of be prepared for the crunchiness that might come out and being prepared for the idea that sometimes we need to strip the romanticism out of these like legal institutions that sometimes we have to interact with, right? So that when we're talking about like, hey friends, like, I know that I love you and I know that I want to be with you for the long term. I'm also recognizing that we're not like getting married for like the romantic or religious or like symbolic meaning of marriage. And that means that we need to talk about a prenup because like, I don't want to be in a place where we didn't talk about that because it felt uncomfortable, but we should have because, like we weren't necessarily in the level of maturity in our emotional relationship to be able to handle what's going to come after. And those conversations need to happen, and they need to happen not just in relationships like this where you're like getting married for like a very specific legal reason, but also in some of these other marriages that we're participating in where it's like, hey friend, I know we're getting married with all of our friends around us and it's going to be so exciting. There's going to be a big party and it's going to be meaningful and beautiful. And also like, what happens if we divorce? You know what I mean? Like, what happens if one of us cheats on the other person, right? Like these types of conversations need to continue to happen, not just in this type of relationship, but in all relationships, because that type of thing actually helps us prepare for what is maybe not likely, but possible, right? The things that might actually affect us. And I got this honestly from that book that we read, Practical Marriage, right? Where there's like or Practical Wedding, where there's a whole section that's like, here are questions that you and your partner should talk about before you decide to get married. And some of them are like, what would it feel like if I cheated on you, right? Like, how would we move forward in this and these are the types of conversations that I think can be helpful for folks, regardless of like what type of marriage they're engaging in, because it can help us make sure that we're on the same page around how we want to handle these crunchy and difficult things as they come up.
Yes. I think that's so beautiful because we're not just talking about citizenship here. We're talking about the vulnerability of working together with somebody towards an unknown future.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes. With shared goals and shared values, but different experiences of those things.
I think that listening to Sam talk, it gives me another idea too, maybe fodder for a future conversation with your boyfriend. Like, so this happens at the court, or with your lawyers or whatever. You're married in the future. Boom, done. So what's next? What's the next relationship check-in? Not that you need to be on an escalator and not that you need to stay on a super strict schedule, but like, okay, so then we stay married for a year and then we kind of like check in and see how it's going or what? Like, how do you want to talk about the future? Do you want to just see how your relationship grows with this new legal addition? I'm not really sure, but I guess I think the biggest thing that I think Sam and I want to give you is a sense of like, yeah, makes sense to us. Sounds good. You're like, this isn't abnormal to us. This isn't irresponsible or unnatural or crazy, delusional for you to think of. It sounds like very rooted in reality, rooted in compassion and generosity and hope. And it makes sense to us.
Absolutely. And I am sure that there are communities of folks out there that have done something similar, have gone through this process, that probably have a bunch of resources that could help you through it. Because again, this is not an uncommon thing that is happening here, right? Like this is a very real process that lots of folks go through, and they can probably offer advice and tips and things to think about. So seek out communities of folks who have been through something similar.
And who aren't Sam and I.
Yeah, absolutely, because I have not been through this.
We're just ignorant fools that have like big feelings.
Lots of feelings and want to talk about big institutions and the meanings behind them.
The meanings and that they're meanies is what I heard you say. They're such meanies.
They're mean.
Okay, anyway, hey, we love you. Good luck. Yeah, we believe in you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for trusting us with this question. We really appreciate it. And we hope that this helps. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get access to those monthly office hours, which are when Sierra and I hop on Zoom with anyone who supports us on Patreon, and we talk about our lives. We answer people's questions. We make funny jokes. It's like this show, but like
sort of
way better.
Yeah, I love it.
So please check that out. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get access to those office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his music and podcasts. And remember, guess what? The definitions of things, the values we were given as young people, those are just placeholders until we decide what we want things to mean to us. If you want to create your own purpose in life, to pursue your heart, to follow what feels right to you, Sam and I believe in you. And if all else fails,
just break up.